Hey everybody, welcome to the Animation Conversation. I'm Rusty here with my co-host.
What's up, party people? It's your old pal F.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Animation Conversation. I'm Rusty and I'm here with F. Our guest today, our first guest, is a friend of yours, and I'll go ahead and let you do the introduction since you're already familiar with him. I'm familiar with him, but in a more exhibitionist way. I've watched everything he's probably created or every podcast he's ever been on. In anticipation.
Oh no, I'm not gonna be able to repeat any of my answers then.
Yeah, no, that's the great thing. That's the great thing. I wanted this interview, and it's kind of unique for me because I'm not just some random dude on the internet doing the interview. I have somebody with me that so it's unique in a lot of the other interviews that I've watched of yours. So yeah, F, I'll go ahead and let you introduce our guest here.
Well, I mean, suffice it to say, it's an honor to have this guy here as our very first actual guest on the Animation Conversation, and it's not only a special occasion, for the show, but it's a special occasion for me because I have just always considered him a really good friend, the kind of friend who, after just years and years and years and years and years, still sends Christmas cards, like actual Christmas cards that arrive in the mail before Christmas. I mean, look, what do you say about Rob Renzetti? He is the creator of the amazing show that I worked on with him called My Life as a Teenage Robot. He's the creator of Mina and the Count. He has been instrumental in such shows as Gravity Falls, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, Kid Cosmic, Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab. The list goes on, but to me, I just call him Rob, my good buddy Rob. Rob Renzetti, everybody. Welcome to the show, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. Please call me Mr. Renzetti for the purposes of this interview.
Oh, that's right. You always used to insist on that. Yeah, make no mistake. Everyone listening who is a fan of My Life as a Teenage Robot, Rob Renzetti was a tyrant.
Yes, it's horrible.
Well, he F kind of left out one of my favorites. Like my favorite one is Two Stupid Dogs. Actually,
oh wow,
that's
one
of
going all the way
my
back
favorites.
to the start of my career.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the first show I ever worked on in LA, in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And then also, I guess you also worked on Batman the Animated Series too, correct?
I did prior to that, but that was in Spain. That's why I said in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, in Spain. Okay.
That's a fun story, though. I don't want to leap in and start telling stories before you.
No, you're good. No, Two Stupid Dogs. That's one of my favorites. So I really kind of just wanted it to flow, without a whole lot of like extreme question asking. But
I'll flow,
I guess
otherwise known as rambling.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
No, since you brought up Two Stupid Dogs, this is something I actually have not heard that many stories about, which may sound.
I couldn't find that many stories about it either. Like a lot of the interviewers, it seems, haven't that I've watched didn't really ask a lot about that. They asked about other things, bigger shows and stuff like that.
Sure.
But unless you're a fan of cartoons, I don't think Two Stupid Dogs is on everybody's radar. But I'm a ultra fan of cartoons and animation, so it's one that really, like, I don't know, it's like it was one that I watched it a lot, and especially when it was in syndication, I watched it a ton. So
Rob, Two Stupid Dogs, that was, I mean, wasn't that Larry Huber was a part of that, correct?
Larry Huber was a part of that. It was created and run by Donovan Cook. And the kind of origin story of how I ended up working on that was that we were all CalArts grads, everybody that kind of worked on that show. Donovan was kind of either in the same year as Paul Rudish or maybe 1 year before him. I forget how it was, because we were all kind of straddled in different years at CalArts, but we all overlapped. So Donovan and Paul knew each other, Paul Rudish. So Paul got hired as an art director for the Secret Squirrel segment of Two Stupid Dogs, which we only did one season's worth of Secret Squirrel as like a middle show. And then Paul, basically Donovan asked, like, Paul, do you know, we need someone to be an art director for the actual Two Stupid Dogs part of the show, because Paul wanted to do Secret Squirrel. And Paul said, well, I know this guy, Craig McCracken, who'd be perfect for it. So Craig came in and talked with Donovan and basically got hired on the spot. And then Donovan asked both of them, like, do you know any storyboard artists? And Craig's like, yeah, I know two guys, Rob and Gendy. They're great. They're both looking for work. So the two of us came on and we got hired basically on the spot. And I met Donovan, I met Larry Huber that same day. Donovan like walked us around and we met Larry and all that. And then other than that, Mike Moon, who went on was a huge animation exec, came in. We all knew him, and he came in and was basically the lead background designer. And
was Fred Seibert involved? Where was Fred Seibert? I mean, Fred was part of all this at the time, right?
Well, that was Fred's first initiative after coming in and becoming president of Hanna-Barbera.
Right.
And weirdly, they decided once we all got hired, they decided, oh, also Conrad Vernon was another storyboard artist who started, and I can't remember, it was Mike. I think that might have been it. Conrad was there, but Conrad didn't stay very long. He was another guy that we all knew. We were in the same class as Conrad, Gendy, Craig, and me at CalArts. So he was there as well, briefly. But they decided to set us all up in one giant office, which was literally next door to Joe Barbera. Like, you'd have to know how Hanna-Barbera is set up, but Hanna-Barbera is it was a crazy building. It had been built in the 60s, and back then it made sense. But over the years, as Hanna-Barbera had grown, they basically taken what was a beautiful mid-century building and like chopped it into smaller and smaller offices. So you'd have these weird hallways that didn't seem to really have any rhyme or reason how they went. And it was all crazy. But the one part of the building that had been preserved since the 60s was Joe and Bill's offices. And they had these, pretend my head is a hallway.
Always.
And yes. And then like if you're going up the hallway and then you reach the end of the hallway, and if you kept going straight, you'd go out the building. But to either side of that was Joe and Bill. And I didn't know at the time, but because I wouldn't be in Joe's office for years, but Joe's office basically looked the same as it had in the 60s. And Bill, because the two of them hated each other, Bill had moved away from his office years ago, and Fred Seibert had Bill's old office. So, and if this was Bill and Joe's office, Joe's office and Fred's office, we were here. We were in this weird big empty office that was just big enough to put a bunch of animation tables in. And we stayed there for about 2 weeks. And then we were kicked out. Because we were too loud and obnoxious.
I was going to say it had to be at least somewhat intimidating to be working in a space where on the other side of the wall was cartoon royalty.
Yeah, I mean, it was intimidating, but it was also very thrilling. Another thing that happened to me right off the bat was there was a conference room. Like if this was Joe's office, there was like a big conference room right around here, which made sense because he had the head of the company. Like they didn't have to go far if they were in a meeting, right? Giant conference room. I don't know if I was a few days after we got hired and we were going out to have lunch, and there was some lunch meeting going on in that conference room. And what it turned out to be was that Dick Van Dyke was coming in to do some kind of voiceover for one of their specials.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember. I think it might have been the Halloween Tree by Red Burry. I don't know if that was the one he did or something. I don't remember, and I never looked into it, so I'm probably misremembering what it was for. But I love Dick Van Dyke. I had other celebrities sightings, but like this one really thrilled me. And basically all I saw was Dick Van Dyke looking at his script, laughing, and then like taking a big bite of a sandwich as he looked down at the script. But I was thrilled. I wouldn't say it intimidated me, but I was more starstruck by that than just being by Joe, because we never saw Joe. If he was there, he didn't come out of his office. And I don't think he was mostly not there at that time. He was mostly not in the office because Fred had kind of taken over.
Well, I was going to say,
Bill and Joe were mostly figureheads, unfortunately. But
was Fred at this point? Because when I started at Nickelodeon, when I met you and all those guys for Oh Yeah Cartoons and whatnot, Fred was like really hands-on with everything. Was Fred really hands-on during these Hanna-Barbera days?
He was hands-on with Two Stupid Dogs. Like we never saw Fred at all in any of the things we did, any of the pitches, as far as I'm remembering. I might be misremembering, but I don't really think he pretty much was like, because he was very, very strongly influenced by John Kay, and John Kay had told him what to do, which is like find someone whose project you like and leave them alone to do that. So he left us alone. And then when that didn't work, because the Dogs did not do well in the ratings, and they didn't give it much of a chance to do well. They gave it a crappy time slot on TBS.
Wasn't it nominated for a daytime Emmy though?
Yeah, he was, and I was
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
the first
yeah.
time I was nominated for an Emmy was in connection with that show.
I think it got beat by Rugrats. So I mean, if you're
You know
if you're gonna
better than me. I
lose,
don't remember those kind of details.
yeah, if you're gonna
Besides
lose
the fact
though,
that I lost.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're
Hey,
gonna
at least
lose it to the Rugrats, wasn't I mean, at least you lost to
I
the
mean, yeah,
Rugrats,
I
you
mean,
know.
it's
I
not a big
mean,
deal, but I
yeah.
mean, basically after that experience, Fred took a more hands-on approach with his next project, which was What a Cartoon, which was a series of shorts. So instead of gambling everything on one or two shows, and it was Two Stupid Dogs was one of the shows, this comedy show, and he also picked up SWAT Cats, if you remember that. That was his
Oh yeah, I
action
do.
show.
Yeah, that was an awesome show. That was a
Then
great
neither of
show.
those shows did well. So the next thing was, rather than put all his eggs into two baskets, he decided to put his eggs into like dozens of baskets, and he picked up they started the What a Cartoon show, and that's where the pilot for Dexter came from, and they actually ended up doing two pilots. Same with Powerpuff, they did a first and a second pilot, and I did Mina and the Count. I did the first Mina and the Count short, the
I
pilot for
remember
Mina.
it all very well. Yeah, I remember Mina and the Count. I remember that early when they were trying to find, like you said, how Fred Seibert kind of had these collectives, and he did it with more than just Nickelodeon. It was Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. I imagine other places too, but
I mean, he's gone
that
on
was
and done, he's done
awesome.
that same
Yeah,
thing again and again and again, because it's
yeah.
borne fruit for him
yeah.
every
It's
generation.
and I could and that's the thing is with every generation that he's done it, I could find a show that I've watched. Like with the last 10 or 15 years or so, the regular show, I
Mhm.
was 21 or 20 when it came out, and I was like in college, so we were like getting
Sure.
stoned and eating a lot of mushrooms and doing schoolwork and stuff like
I, mu-
that.
I must
And
I
that
must stop
was
you,
a show I
however.
watched.
I must stop you, however, though. I am the Fred Seibert of that show.
Oh
Me and
wow.
Craig.
Yeah,
That
yeah, you
actually
and Craig. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that actually came out of the Cartoon Institute, which was Craig and my version of being Fred Seibert,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Actually,
Um,
that's what I was gonna
but
mention. Yeah,
it was
yeah. Those
based on
collectives.
it was Fred's model, which was
Yeah.
the old model, basically, which is you do a bunch of shorts and you see what people respond to. And
you know he did that there, and then it seems like, and again, this is me, I never went to Cal Arts, I wasn't a part of that whole sort
I'm
of.
sorry, I can't talk to you about
Yeah, I know.
it. We have to end the interview.
I will say it's one of the reasons why, I mean, I look back on the time why I have such fond memories of you, because I was an outsider. I mean, you all knew each other, and there were people from that crowd who were nice to me, and there were people who weren't, and you were one of the ones who was just nice as can be right
Well,
out of the
thank
gate.
you.
And
I tried to be a nice guy. No, I mean there was definitely a thing when I was, not to get off topic too
no,
much, but
yeah.
I bring up something that we used to be called the Cal Arts Mafia, which is that in TV you had to be connected. You had to be connected to
Yeah,
Cal Arts in some way to get a job. And that was never entirely true, but there was a kernel of truth in it, which is that people that knew each other hired each other. Like
sure.
what happened on Two Stupid Dogs happened on other shows. Like, Paul got hired because he knew Donovan. Craig got hired because he knew Paul. Genny and I got hired because we knew Craig.
Which
And that was
is
because we all went to Cal Arts together.
which
You
is
know, but
why I felt, I felt so incredibly, fortunate when it was, I mean, it was basically Larry Huber and Fred Seibert who hired me to come, I think it was Chalk Zone was my first show that I worked on over there. But I remember, looking back to all you guys from Cal Arts who all knew each other, who had all done stuff together, in comes this hayseed from Kalamazoo. And and I just remember being so overwhelmed with gratitude, because I just looked at you guys and all this stuff on your walls and all the stuff you'd done, and was just blown away. And I had such a gosh golly, I was like Jimmy Olsen to all your Supermen. And so that must have been thoroughly annoying.
yeah, if
But
I do take off my glasses, I do sprout a cape and a lovely head of hair.
what's interesting is, the Oh Yeah Cartoon Show and the What a Cartoon Show, which were so similar. Was Mina in the Count the only one that was able to sort of
Yes, it was the
like
only one that crossed over. And the
that's
reason I left Hanna-Barbera and left my crew of people behind was because Fred said, because Mina it didn't go anywhere at Hanna-Barbera, and he said I want to try and make Mina Nick. So that's why I left. That's why I left that crew, all my buddies, and moved to Nickelodeon to try and make Mina into a show there, which of course
is,
didn't
Oh, okay.
happen.
was that the impetus for the mass exodus of like Fred and Larry and Wasson and like just all these other people that like.
I mean, Fred left, I think, because his contract was coming up at Hanna-Barbera, and I don't know why he didn't want to stay, or Nickelodeon made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I really don't know. But Fred leaving and going over to Nickelodeon, then he started poaching people, obviously. And Larry was one of the ones he poached. I was one of the ones he poached. Butch Hartman showed up, ended up there eventually. Though Butch wasn't, I don't know, I mean, Butch must have been in Hanna-Barbera at the time. I guess maybe he was working with on Johnny Bravo. I don't remember.
He was.
I remember what he was at before he left and came over to Nickelodeon.
And so so you get to Nickelodeon, and you do get to make Mina and the Count. I feel like whenever I've heard you talk about Mina and the Count, I feel like you have a special affection for that
Yes.
has not lessened over the years. Am I wrong about that? Or
no, I mean, that's a huge odyssey and could take up an hour in itself, but I'll try and I'll be as quick with that as I can. First of all, when I left Hanna-Barbera, I couldn't do Mina and the Count right away because the pilot was still legally tied to Hanna-Barbera and Cartoon Network for like another year. So I left, and the first year of I did a series of 4 pilots that were all different ideas, like other ideas that I was like, maybe this could be a series, maybe this could be a series, maybe that could be a series. And I was interested in those and saw potential in them, some more than others. But like I was basically marking time to have the chance to do more Mina and the Count. And by the time the second season of What a Cartoon got up and running, Mina and the Count was mine again. The contract with Hanna-Barbera had lapsed. The rights had come back to me. Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon had to pay Hanna-Barbera / Cartoon Network some money because they'd created a pilot, which they weren't happy about. But Fred was very much in favor of the show and pushed it with them.
Yeah.
So that second season, I was slated to do 6 episodes of Mina. I ended up only doing 5 because Nickelodeon hated it so much. I mean, that's a little harsh, but they did not see it as a serious potential. So that broke my heart. I had been trying for a very long time. Before it showed Mina and the Count, much like Dexter and Powerpuff, started as my second year CalArts film. So it was a student film. The same time Getty was making Dexter, the same time Craig was making Powerpuff, I was making Mina and the Count in school. And then we did all the pilot version at Hanna-Barbera / for Cartoon Network. And then at some point, after Dexter had its first season, they were considering Mina as a new middle cartoon for Dexter. So the Ghouls Tribunal, which ended up being the second episode of Mina, or the first one at Nick, I actually developed that and storyboarded it and pitched it at Hanna-Barbera originally as like, this is what another episode of Mina and the Count would look like.
Right.
If it were to be the middle cartoon for Dexter, which would have been perfect for me. I would have loved to have done that. It would have been like a slow ramp up. It would have seen if it had the potential to be a series on its own or whatever, but I would have been able to do more with the characters. Absolutely. But instead they went with Justice League, which is what Gendy wanted to do as the middle cartoon, which made sense. It was Gendy's show. So that was, another heartbreak there. Didn't go there. And then after that, but before I went to Nickelodeon, there was talk of ABC interested in doing it as a Saturday morning cartoon. And I actually had a meeting at ABC, and I was going over there with one of the Hanna-Barbera execs to talk to them and pitch Mina as a Saturday morning cartoon. And the exec I was going to see, her name was Linda Steiner. She loved Mina and the Count. We had a great meeting, but that meeting took place literally days after Disney bought ABC. Oh, and wow. I was in that meeting, like very, very positive. Everything was great. Yeah, but I had to ask, I'm like, well, ABC just got bought by Disney. Isn't Disney going to basically program your Saturday morning? And I was like, no, we're going to be independent. We get to do whatever we want. I'm like, okay. Had that meeting, went away, went great. Never heard anything, of like, I don't know, a month later, they announced the new Saturday morning slate and it was all Disney shows. So again, this is the roller coaster ride I was on.
Yeah.
It was going to be something, then it wasn't. It was going to be something, then it wasn't. So the last hill on that roller coaster was Nickelodeon. And I got to go, 1 more episode and 2 more episodes, 3 more episodes, 5 more episodes. Going to get that 6th episode. No, down the big hill. We don't want any more,
Now, famously, and I feel like at this point, you've told the story that the other cartoon that you wound up pitching for Oh Yeah Cartoons and created a pilot for was, of course, My Life as a Teenage Robot.
Yes.
Which, obviously, not only did I remember thinking at the time, well, this is no brainer. This show's going to be on for 20 years.
Wow.
No, I 100% thought that the second I saw it. And but now let me get this question out of the way because I'm really active on the My Life as a Teenage Robot Discord fan site and all that stuff. And
Okay.
but I want to dovetail the, or I want to piggyback two questions. If you could reboot Mina and the Count, or My Life as a Teenage Robot, would you do it? And how do you think they'd be different
From each other or from what they
from
were?
from how we all remember them?
I mean, if let's start with Teenage Robot because that's an easier answer. Would I
Everybody,
do it? I mean, probably sure. Why wouldn't I? I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a little bit skeptical of all the reboots that are happening. For the last, I don't know, what is it, a million years now? I can't remember.
yeah,
It's been so
Yeah.
long since we had any. I'm a big fan of original ideas that nobody has ever seen before.
yeah,
You know, but I have affection for those characters, and I didn't get to do all the stories I wanted to do with them. The difference with Teenage Robot that I would have loved to done back in the day, and F we weren't allowed to do this thing, which was big arcs, big continuing
yeah,
stories. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a huge influence on Teenage Robot. I love that show. But they got to do these. They used to do would do like an episode, a story that wrapped up in an episode.
right.
And sometimes that would all it would be, but then there'd be a scene at the end that hinted at the big season-long arc that they were building. I would have loved to have done like season-long arcs with Teenage Robot. It was built for that,
Now, what about Mina and the
superheroes.
Count though? Would you if you could reboot that? Would you like? How do you think you would handle it differently now if you
I
were?
don't know. Yeah, I mean, the Mina and the Count is like it's really built on 7-minute cartoons, right? That's how
Right,
they were. But I mean, I could certainly, if I were to do that as a longer format, like with either longer episodes or with like continuing stories, the nature of it would
right,
certainly change. I mean, there were versions of it back before it was anything where I was
right.
thinking about bigger, more serious arcs. The idea of like the Count loves Mina, but he loves her like you love a daughter. Would he ever think of changing her into a vampire?
Right,
What if
right.
she were on the edge of death? What would he do? Like the idea of like, I mean, Mina is Mina. Mina is like basically Mina is like she's a very simple little girl who just has love
Yeah,
for the Count.
yeah,
There's not a lot of emotionally going on there. She'd probably remain pretty simple. The show was and always would be about the Count and how he reacts
right.
to this new factor in his life, having been a traditional vampire for so long, actually loving a human and caring for them. What does that mean to a vampire? Does it
Yeah,
mean he would turn her into a vampire to save her? Would that be the one thing he wouldn't ever do to her?
right, right,
Those
right.
kind of bigger emotional moral dilemmas would be all on the Count. And there's a version of the show that could be like that, but it would certainly
Yeah,
be a different show. I mean, it was built back in the day when 7-minute cartoons were what we were expected to do. If we got lucky, we got to do 11, which
yeah.
that's
Oh,
but that was it. And since
yeah,
since then I've worked on shows where we did what I just talked about with Kid Cosmic.
yeah.
Every episode was a story in and of itself, but every season had a season long arc. Before that, we did the same kind of thing on Gravity Falls, which was like there are episodes that are just a lot of fun. There are episodes that are fun, plus you get a little hint of the bigger stuff that's going on.
Now, see
Um,
that, and Rusty, I'm really sorry I'm not letting you talk, but
No, you're good. I'm
Poor Rusty,
listening.
he's got that
That
mic held up to
interviewers,
his held
the
up to
the the
his
best
mouth.
part. Well, that's an interviewer's job is to listen, not to speak. So
well, I feel bad because I'm hogging all the time, and meanwhile, you and I used to sit and play board games together, and I feel like I'm asking you now the questions that I should have asked you then because I learned so much from you, and you were such a huge influence on me.
I'm
And
actually not constrained by time. So
okay,
the only time constraint is
well,
what you're constrained by.
Are you
So
saying you're immortal, Rusty? You're not
yeah,
constrained by
I'm
time?
not
look at his
constrained by
hair. Of
time.
course, he's immortal.
I am the
Are
count.
you Thor, Rusty? Are you really
Yeah,
Thor?
yeah.
Thor. Yeah.
No, but you were just talking about story, and I've heard you mention elsewhere that story is sort of your main thing, and cartoons
Yep.
are sort of a vessel for you. When you were back doing Two Stupid Dogs, you were a storyboard artist.
Yep.
Did you see yourself like was storyboarding a means to an end? Like, did you see yourself being a career board artist, or was it always about story and using storyboards or using animation as the vessel?
I mean, I don't think I conceived of it that way at that time. I mean, I was just happy to have a job, because I was the brief experience I had overseas as an animator in Spain.
Yeah,
was punishing, and I realized I was not very good. I was an okay animator, but I was a horrible animator of superhero characters. I could not
Good.
draw that stuff to save my life. So after having kind of had a really rough experience overseas and getting back to LA and basically crashing on my friend's couch for a couple months with no job prospects, when Two Stupid Dogs came along, I was just thrilled to be employed.
Yeah.
And not even sure I could manage to do boards professionally if I was up to the task. But you know, as I went forward and I did boards on Two Stupid Dogs, I actually got the chance to direct for the first time on Two Stupid Dogs. What happened in the second season is Gendy and Craig and Paul had all moved on to doing the shorts, but
Right.
I stuck around with Two Stupid Dogs for a second season, and I did a board. What happened on the second season? We only had a few limited episodes because they gave us a second season basically so that we could take Secret Squirrel out and they could put more Stupid Dog cartoons in the middle and just sell Stupid Dog on its own into syndication without the Secret Squirrel portion, which I never understood, and I love those
Mhm.
My favorite
But
part
anyways,
of it was actually the secret squirrel thing. And I
yeah.
actually, somewhere in all my knickknacks at my desk, I have a secret squirrel Pez dispenser still in the wrapper.
Is that the original Hanna-Barbera old school design?
Yeah,
Not the
yeah.
new design.
No, it's the new design Pez
I
dispenser.
love Secret Squirrel. It was one of my favorite Hanna-Barbera characters, and I think it was all of ours. That's why we ended up reviving it as a middle cartoon.
Awesome show. Yeah, that's a whole
Thank
nother
you.
hour
Yeah, I loved it. I
conversation, but it's
loved
an
working
awesome, awesome show.
on those
Yeah,
sequences.
I love the
I
new
felt
ones
like I
too.
kind of came into my own as a storyboard artist more on those than on the Two Stupid Dog stuff. I kind of felt gain confidence. But the thing that Stupid Dogs did on second season, give me the chance to direct. I would board an artist. I would be a storyboard artist boarding a show, and then I would direct that same episode. So like I would take my own board and then figure out the timing on it.
That really was,
I got my feet wet.
as somewhat like the handful of episodes that I directed of Teenage Robot that I also boarded, like that's just one of the best feelings ever as far as I'm concerned. When you get to
Yeah.
board and direct like your own show throughout the course of your career, have you like will you take a segment? Like did you ever do this on Gravity Falls or Kid Cosmic? Would you ever take stuff and say, I want to board this one like sequence because I have it in my head and I want it to look a certain way? Or do you?
I mean, I haven't done that in a long time. I do it on Robot all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to redo stuff all the time, but I'd also do stuff first all the time. You know, I only did that fully with the first series episode of Teenage Robot, which was Raggedy Android, the one where she goes to the fair dressed as a giant rag doll. I did the rough board on that, and Kerwin cleaned it up, and I designed it that way as a way to like try and get like, this is how I see the show. This is how I would do this show. If I were a board artist on the show, this is what I would do with it. And then I had Kerwin clean it up because it was like, and this is what the characters are actually supposed to look like.
Well, now see, now you've gone and brought up Alex Kerwin, who's another one of my favorite people on the planet. And
Mine too.
I joked at the top of the show about what a tyrant you were on that show, and I am able to joke about that because the opposite is what was true. I mean, was it just me, Rob, or was that really an exceptional crew? Like, I feel like that was one of the few shows I've worked on where absolutely everybody pretty much got along. We all had the same sort of mojo going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was my show, so it's always hard to judge from the top, but I certainly loved my crew and loved everybody that worked on it to a greater or lesser extent. But no, I really did love everybody. Obviously, loved you, F. You were a great board artist. I had a great board team, luckily. Eventually, it took a while to get everybody corralled and to get the team humming, but once we did, yeah, I loved it. And Alex and I had met actually as on the Oh Yeah pilots. He had come out. He was super young, super talented. Larry Huber, much like you were lured him out from the East Coast, or no, from the Midwest. Pardon me, he's from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right? Am I getting that right?
I think so.
And you're from Kalamazoo, Michigan?
Michigan, yeah. A few short drive away from Chicago.
Yeah, not too far.
Chicago is where Kalamazoo.
I'd met him and thought he was incredibly talented. He had done a couple of his own pilots during Oh Yeah. I didn't been involved in directed one of his called Magic Trixie, which I loved.
Right. Oh, that was a great one.
Very excited to do the timing on that for him.
Yeah.
And really, he designed the original Teenage Robot pilot, which looked very much different from the show. But I knew when I got picked up as a series that I wanted him as my art director. I really didn't have a second choice, and luckily he said yes.
And it was really fun because a year later his voice changed. No,
we
I'm
make, we
he
made,
was
yeah, I mean,
so young.
Alex basically went to art high school and then skipped college and just got hired in the industry and never looked back.
He's
Oh,
what
wow.
every middle school kid thinks is going to happen.
Yeah.
Like snatched up by some big studio to go work on their but I remember meeting him, and yeah, he was, I mean, he was literally like 17 or 18. And
When he was working on on the pilot. So yeah, when we were working on them together, he was a teacher. I drove him to work for like 2 years because he didn't have a license.
that
So he was, and hey, kudos to him. He came
That's
out here
awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh,
basically on his own
I'd have
and
never had the guts, not
made
in
a
a million
career of it.
years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the that you, Alex, that whole crew, whenever anybody asks, like, what was a favorite show you've ever worked on, my immediate answer is my own. But I never got to work. But I mean, I've had 6 shows picked up, and only my Oh Yeah Cartoon one was the only one to even make it on the air. So if you're talking about shows I've worked on, the answer is always My Life as a Teenage Robot. Like every single person. I mean, Ani and Alex and just everyone, more so than any other show I've worked on. And I was working on Teenage Robot, having just done The Fairly Odd Parents and Invader Zim, both of which had very, very different crews and and I had a good time on both shows. But there were different personalities and different, just everything on that show. Teenage Robot, I felt like, was the first show I'd ever worked on where everyone here just sort of has the same vision, the same sort of, we all looked up to you, and we all just wanted to make you happy and make you proud. And
Well,
um,
thank you.
it was one of those situations where, because the boss was nice, and because the boss, just sort of, you did what Fred did. You let us do our jobs. And then when we brought it to you, I remember, I tell this story all the time. I remember, it was when I was first starting to get a little gutsy with my Teenage Robot boards, and I was changing stuff like a lot. Because we were just handed outlines. We weren't given scripts.
Yeah.
We were given outlines.
Yeah.
And I remember,
The point was for you to change stuff. The point for you was to help create it.
yeah, but until Teenage Robot, I had been beaten down enough to be like, some people like your humor and some don't. And I remember, I can't remember which show. Oh, it had to be Robot Riot,
Okay.
because the ending of that show was, and then the sky opens up and the entire cluster comes down from outer space and starts
Very
shooting.
easy, very easy to board.
Just it's Atlanta burns. You know what I mean? It's that whole thing where the outline was like, the entire cluster comes down and there's a huge battle, and I was just like, hell no. And now beyond just saying hell no, I also said to myself, what is more engaging to the audience? A million little things flying around, or one big thing that Jenny has to contend with? And I remember I changed that, and I remember saying to you before going into the pitch, I was like, Rob, I changed this a lot. But your answer was perfect. And your answer is what I feel like all bosses would do. You're like, if you made it better, I don't care. And you liked it. So that's the kind of boss Rob was. Like, like, we would go into pitches and you would take ideas from absolutely everybody and they'd make it into the show.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how we ran things on Dexter when we first started Dexter, which is there was a group of people in the room and anybody was welcome to speak up and give either criticisms or ideas. And if you had a criticism, it probably was better if you had an idea. But we basically we spent hours after a board was pitched figuring out what we wanted to keep and what we wanted to change. And that was something that I brought over to Teenage Robot, which was always a bit of a, it was a gamble because you never knew what you were going to get from your artist, because you gave them so much freedom, and sometimes you didn't get stuff that was so great, and sometimes you did. And usually, UF and Brandon Cruz and Bernie Peterson and then Heather Martinez, those are the the board artists I ended up with at the end of the show. And you guys are all great. Like usually, you know, your batting average was high. So if I didn't like a joke or two, that wasn't a big deal, but I knew I wasn't going to have
Right.
to reboard the whole show because it was like, you missed a point entirely. None of you ever missed a point entirely. You always kind
Right.
of you were always on target.
Now, how did, and again, sorry, Rusty, how
Oh,
did,
you're good. You're good.
how
I
was,
had set aside about 2 hours for this conversation,
okay.
so we're
How
good.
was, how was, now, how did any of that, or did any of that carry My Little Pony Friendship is Magic? Like, tell us a little bit about, like,
My
That was a
quick
very different show. Oh, what did you
Yeah,
say, Rick?
I have a quick question leading into the
Okay,
to the My Little Pony.
go for
So
it.
My Little Pony had this weird resurgence of fans called bronies, as I'm sure you're very well aware of.
Mhm.
What do you how do you feel about those fans? Like what is your take or thought on middle-aged men and their fascination with My Little Pony?
Well, I'm a middle-aged man, and I was fascinated with My Little Pony once Lauren pitched it to me. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, I was skeptical about working on the show, and having only known about it tangentially and what it was, you know, before we kind of approached it. And you know, Lauren's Craig McCracken's wife, and I knew Lauren well, and but we never really worked together, and I certainly never worked with her as the boss. And on a project that was she was doing being the creative lead on. So we had a couple conversations. She sent me the Bible, and I loved it. I thought this is like I was incredibly impressed at how much she had turned the what I thought was just basically a vapid excuse to sell toys into like a show with actual characters. And that's because she loved, you know, much like we did with Secret Squirrel, which when you go back and look at the original Hanna-Barbera, not to slag them off, but they're basically just it's a pretty silly Hanna-Barbera cartoon with not a lot of substance there. The thing we did with our version of Secret Squirrel is we kind of falsely remembered how good the old Secret Squirrel was, and
Yeah.
in our mind kind of extrapolated out from there and did what we thought would be cool. And she did the same thing with My Little Pony, which is
yeah,
like she played with those dolls as a kid, came up with huge, incredible storylines for all of them. She's told the story herself, so I don't need to repeat it. But basically, I was convinced that this was a show worth working on, and that's why I took the job as story editor on it. So how I feel about bronies was I was the first brony. You know what I mean? Like I was
You
the
were
first
the first
middle-aged man that
brony.
fell
That's
in love with
awesome.
these
Yeah.
characters. I've
Patient
always
Zero.
liked female characters. I think
That's
female
why my
characters
hair's
are more
long. That's why my hair's long. So for brony
interesting.
conventions, I
Yeah.
could put it in a ponytail.
Is there a cutie
I
mark
think this,
hiding underneath all that hair, Rusty?
Yeah,
Is that
under
what
the
you're trying
bottom
to
right
say?
here. Yeah, there's a heart underneath here in the
I,
undercut.
I think this just serves as, and I love things that prove me right. I've been saying for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, good is good, you know. Um,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
if you tell a good story, it's a good story, and that's another reason I was kind of dumbfounded that, you know, and delighted that Teenage Robot got picked up at all and did as good as it did at all. Because I remember, this was after Teenage Robot. I had a show go into development at a couple of different studios that eventually wound up getting dropped because they were like, well, your lead protagonist is a girl and girls don't watch cartoons. And I'm just like, oh, God. I've been told girls don't watch cartoons, kids aren't into superheroes anymore, and kids don't like talking animals. So, you know,
The number one
I mean, look,
selling
any of
movies
those
in the
statements.
world are superhero movies. Like all the top $1 billion movies are all superhero
Of course
movies.
they are now, but I mean those
Yeah.
because
no,
people started making good superhero movies.
right.
I mean all that's just asinine, and it's just those people don't belong in the business. I mean, people
No,
slag off execs all the time, and there are bad execs like that, but there's good execs know what they're talking about and are basically are open to listening
yeah,
to stories if they're good, just like anyone who works in this business should be, and anyone and the best. This is the kind of audience you want, like that you're going to like. You know, everybody goes into some things. You know, I was skeptical of My Little Pony, and then I was convinced, and then I was in. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
that's certain. I think some people are worried about that a girl protagonist is a hump that some people just aren't going to be able to get over. And I mean that there is some truth to that, but
sure.
I'm not. There's so much out there. You're never going to get everybody to watch what you make, and you kind of have the convenience of forgetting about some of the people, like the people that aren't going to be into it. Those aren't the
Yeah.
people you're trying to get. You're trying to get the people that are into it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
That now,
and we'll
this
give it a
is
chance, you know, and that's all you can ask is someone who creates things is for the audience to give you a chance.
this is another one of those questions that I get asked a lot about Teenage Robot, and I have to only sort of rely on my own memory, which is more and more faulty every single day. Um,
I understand.
but the thing, you know, fans, because fans of Teenage Robot are just passionate about it. And by the way, like, I mean, the nicest people you'll ever want to meet. They're always just super nice and just very, you know, enthusiastic about the show. But the thing they're always on and on about is why did Nick cancel it? And I'm always like, well, Nick didn't cancel it. It just didn't get picked up again.
Right.
You know, my feeling was, and maybe you can correct me from this, I felt like the whole time we were doing it that Nick wanted the show to do what, like I felt in Kurt. I felt like they were behind us.
They were until they weren't. And that sounds flippant, but basically, to give you a quick summary of how things worked, we got picked up for the first season. My agent actually pushed them to pick up more episodes than they wanted to.
Yeah.
So they picked up a full 13. I think they wanted to do 10 or something like that initially. And to make my salary viable, we pushed to get 13. So we did. We got 13, which was at that time was a full season.
Yeah.
And then the second season, like the process I had to go through with the second season is they focus grouped the first season. They got notes from kids. They gave those notes and criticisms to us. They said, we want you to present us with a pitch pack for second season that tells you how you're going to address these shortcomings that the kids feel the show has.
Wow.
Which we did. I won't go into we presented that pack to them. It was a whole song and dance. Went through, showed it to them. They talked about it. There was discussions. They said, okay, we're giving you a second season. The third season got picked up like this. We're giving you a third season.
Mm-hmm.
But there was very few caveats. It was like, you know, we're not crazy about where the ratings are at, but we feel that the show will find its audience. We like the show a lot. We're giving you a third season. So I didn't go through no song and dance. They just gave us a third season out of nowhere.
Right.
And then the way they canceled this or didn't give us a fourth season was basically they just said like, yeah, the ratings never came up. They didn't get to where we need them to be. And we can't spend any more of our time or money on this. You're done. So, you know, we didn't get that fourth season. And at that point, that was what I wanted, was one more season. I would have wanted 4 seasons, and then I would have been either wanted a break or would have been done and would have wrapped it up in some way. But we didn't get the fourth season. So that was how it went. So you're right. And in fact that they didn't like all of a sudden come in and shut us down in the middle of production or whatever. We produced what we were picked up for.
Right.
Never got picked up for that last season of like 13 more episodes.
Well, and people forget, you know, at the time, the internet was still very, very young, and all we had were ratings. Like, that's all we had. There were no like websites devoted to Teenage Robot with just thousands and thousands of fans going, this show must stay on. You know,
you wouldn't get that kind of you didn't get that secondary feedback from the audience. You just had the numbers. You just had the raw numbers.
Well, how does that
raw numbers weren't there?
How does the social media and all that stuff affect the industry now, and how long a cartoon or how long something lasts on television?
My answer is I don't know. I mean, because I'm not on that end of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Netflix has all the data in the world, and you know, but when working on Kid Cosmic, we had 3 seasons from the beginning. They don't tell you that in the public. They say like, we've picked up this new show from Craig McCracken, Kid Cosmic. And then like they announced that they've picked up the second season, when in reality they picked up all 3 seasons at once. So I don't know if that's true with other shows. I think some shows they do wait to see what the numbers are like before they decide whether they're going to do more or not. But for Craig's show, they just basically picked us up. So that was very freeing. We didn't have to worry about anything. But you know, then they have the data of like what the audience is thinking and whatever, and they present all that to Craig and then swear him to secrecy. So I don't really have any insight into that kind of thing. But I mean, it's a whole different world out there because there are so many different ways you can look at things and decide what you want to do. And every company is different. Every company has their different parameters, how they define success or how they define a hit and what they're willing to do. And it's basically the same kind of like alchemy that comes together for anything to get picked up or for anything to continue, which is like, how big of an asshole is the creator of the show?
Well, in Craig's,
how good is the show doing? How hard is it to produce? How much is it to produce? You know what I mean? Like, what are we getting out of it? Are there tangential things we're getting out of it besides the direct money from advertising or
Right.
the number of views. Does, like HBO would pick up stuff because it gave them prestige for a long time. They became
Right.
HBO. They came what we talked about because they basically decided this is a loss leader for us. Yes, this show's super expensive, but the critics love it. And
Right.
they're talking about us in a way they didn't talk about us when all we did was run old movies that are 5 to 10 years old. So that's why HBO started making new stuff. That's why everybody kind of followed that lead. That's why American Movie Classics, went from playing very, very old movies to picking up Mad Men and all the other
Yeah.
originals
Yeah.
they did, because it gave them prestige and
Right.
up their profile.
See, and that had to
So
feel good when you and Craig started Kid Cosmic, because going back to the topic of story,
mhm.
you are now in a position where you're not even just thinking about one season. You can have a real, like, did you feel like you finally had some room to breathe a little bit? And
In a way, yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to like how many episodes you have to do and how long do you have to tell the story. We actually, originally it was going to be every season was going to be 10 episodes.
uh-huh.
And we ended up going too long and spending too much money. But two, we realized that the stories we wanted to tell in the second season and the third season didn't need as long as the first season did.
Okay.
So cutting back on the number of episodes made sense from a financial standpoint, but also made sense from a story standpoint.
I, looking at the show, it's not surprising to me that it was costly, because it's gorgeous to look at. Like,
Thank you.
it's a great show, and the story is amazing, and it's one of those things that just, particularly just the age of the kid and everything, and it just, it hits close to home. But man, oh man, is it pretty to look at. Like,
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to like this new generation of cartoons. That's like we're beginning the wave of the next like generation of cartoons. I'm really interested to see where it goes and what direction it goes now that we have social media, we have
Mhm.
like a greater access to technology and stuff to do these things, where before you might have had, maybe we might have lost the world's greatest animator, 10 times over just because of, technology deficiencies and things like that. And now you could almost animate things just from cell phones. Like my son plays with a little animation app sometimes, and like you could create these little flip books just from your phone, kind of thing. So I'm really interested to see what kind of crazy things come up in the next decade or so of cartoons. So I had a couple of questions for you specifically for the editor. I told the editor I'd ask you these specific questions because he's a huge fan of My Life as a Teenage Robot and
Well,
stuff like that.
why doesn't he or she show up and ask these questions himself then?
I wish he could. He actually works for a
Howard.
TV he actually works for a TV station. So
Oh, okay. Well,
he's
we'll keep
actually
him anonymous
he's
then.
daytime. Yeah, he's doing daytime TV and late night podcasting. So he'll be editing this into the wee
Okay,
hours.
all right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I
No, you're
apologize
good.
to him
You're
as he's
good.
editing
He'll
this. I
he'll
didn't mean
love
to call
that.
you a
He'll
coward.
love that. He likes those kind of jokes. So he'll love that Rob Renzetti, one of his favorite creators, made a joke. So he'll like that. So he said one of his curiosities was with the advancement of technology from the 2000s to now. Would you say that what are the biggest differences that you've noticed in terms of the animation to the whole production process of like making a cartoon?
I mean, well, it's easier to do the kind of designy stuff that designy style is kind of my bread and butter now, because you don't have to hand draw everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
like we did Kid Cosmic with Mercury Filmworks, and they do everything digitally, and it's not Flash, and I forget what they call their system because I don't pay attention to technology very well. But basically, they've created puppets, but then
yeah.
they have this amazing ability to manipulate those puppets, and
Mhm.
really basically they are doing what you do in traditional animation. They're using all the same philosophies, all the same theories. They squash and stretch everything. They manipulate everything the same way, but they don't have to rely on their draftsmanship in order to do it. They get it looking right once, and then it looks right forever. And boy, oh boy, do I wish we had that technology when we were drawing a robot show with a character who had a perfect circle for a head.
It is as though, like, Teenage Robot ended, and then the Cintiq was invented, and suddenly, and now
Yeah.
here I am with the
Yes.
ability to draw a perfect circle freehand and nothing to use it on.
Exactly. Yeah. It was, I
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
mean,
crazy.
literally half of the time I spent working on Teenage Robot when nobody else was there and I was working late nights and weekends was me going to the copier because I'd drawn Jenny perfectly, but she was too big or too small. And I would go to the copier and copy her at 110%, 105%.
Yeah.
101%,
Yeah.
trying to find the right size so that when I went back to my desk and used the light box and put her
Yeah.
in the scene, that I wouldn't have to truck back halfway across the studio to go to the photocopier again to do that because I hadn't gotten the size correct yet again.
Yeah.
Because once you draw something right, you don't want to have to do it ever again, especially with characters that have circles for heads. Because it was so hard to get her to look right.
Yeah.
Freehand, you know what I mean? But with one of the digital animation programs now, all I had to do was draw or have Alex draw her right once, and she would have been right forever, and we
Yeah.
could have played around and manipulated her and all that. But so, like, it would be a great time to reboot Teenage Robot for that
Yeah.
reason.
Oh,
It certainly would
oh
be a lot easier
oh my
you wouldn't
gosh.
have to worry. The board artist wouldn't have to worry about her being on model ever again.
And
And
that was
that's
always
the
my
problem.
worst part. That was always like every show I'd ever worked on, I would get all kinds of, people would say, "Oh, your boards are great, but God, you've got to learn to draw. You've got to learn to draw and model." And I'm still no good at it. But, you know, so I would have killed for this technology. I would have
Yeah.
Alex used to think my storyboards were too ambitious then. I would have really gone nuts. And,
Well, just so you know what a big burden it was back in the days, like another Bernie Peterson, who was another board artist on Teenage Robot, literally bought his own photocopy machine and had it in his cubicle with him so
yeah,
that he
yeah,
didn't have to trek across the studio or wait for somebody else who was using the photocopy machine. Like, he just did his drawings, and then if he didn't have them the right size, he swiveled around in his chair and got him to the right size without ever having him leave his cubicle. So, you know, the technology that's come along, it makes a huge difference in terms of just the burden of producing this stuff. Now, the flip side of that is because you can make things look super slick and you can get things done super quick, boards have just exploded in terms of the number of panels and the amount of work that board artists are meant to do. Like, they basically are sometimes animating sequences rather than just giving a couple of poses to get the idea of the scene across. And so I don't know that the job of board artists has really become easier. It's just the
no,
focus has shifted to producing a million panels so they can lay right into the animatic and basically show the execs, who should know better, what it's going to look like as a finished product. That should never be the point of a board artist, in my board or a board artist job, in my opinion. It should just be like, here is the blueprint for the
right.
cartoon that you will eventually see animated, not here it is animated in black and white already, which in some cases and in some shows, that is what is happening.
It's the reason to become a director, so that you
Yeah, to
so that
not
you
have to
don't
do
have to
that.
board anymore. Like, my favorite part of the process has always been thumbnailing, like just
Yeah.
getting the idea down, because you're right. When I get asked to do a board now, and this is the complaint among most board artists everywhere, is that the software and the technology has gotten to be such that you're, as a board artist, you're expected to turn in animatics,
Yeah.
and I'm no good at that. Like,
I wouldn't want to be a board artist today.
well,
I
well,
mean,
that
I couldn't
actually,
be. I know I can't, I can't draw that well. I was always an okay draftsman but a good storyteller. And that's why I've kind of migrated to storytelling being the center of my career.
I've always
talk
said the exact same thing. Like, I describe my own drawing ability as serviceable.
talking about directing animation, that's another question that Mason, our editor here, had
Yeah.
a question
Let's hear it.
about, was what is the difference between a director and an animation director? Because we had kind of briefly touched on that once, on one of our episodes that we've already recorded, and we never dove into it. But that was one of the questions he had, and I figured who better
Well,
to
I don't want to
answer
say
than
anything
you
that
two
would
guys.
contradict what F said, but the real answer is those terms are fungible. They're different for every show. They mean
Yeah.
different things on every show. But an animation director, in the way I define animation director, is someone who's strictly dealing with the timing of the show, meaning
Right.
they either are timing the boards to go into animatic, or they're doing exposure sheets, or they're slugging the board, which is an old-fashioned thing that usually isn't done, but it's basically like it's like doing the X sheets before you do the X sheets, which is
Absolutely.
on the board, below the panel on the board. You start figuring out exactly what the timing is going to be. You break it down step by step, like, oh,
Literally, how many frames, how many
4 frames for an antic, and then they'll go into this pose, they'll hold this pose for this many frames before they speak. Then they'll have the dialogue, and then after the dialogue, I want a couple more frames before we cut to the next pose. That you get into that kind of detail, but really that's kind of, I think that's mostly gone by the wayside because almost everybody's doing animatics. You get into the animatic and you tweak the time from there.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah,
that's what an
yeah,
animation director is.
yeah. A
A director
director.
experience, a director may be looking that kind of thing, but the director basically has a wider portfolio of what they're responsible for looking at. They're probably involved in the story. They may be involved in the art direction or the designs. There's a million things they might be involved in.
We discussed that. Mason is also a part of. He's a producer and an editor for the other podcast that I do, a King of the Hill podcast. It's actually about the TV show King of the Hill, and we talk about Wes Archer a lot on that show and about his animation direction because there's just so many scenes in King of the Hill to me that like belong in a movie, like an animated movie,
Sure.
and not like a TV show. Like the very beginning episode of King of the Hill is like a fly-in with a mosquito, and it is just like perfect. It's just like so beautiful how he did it. So that's one thing that I like to look at a lot, personally, as a fan of animation, is I like to look at a lot of the direction in the scene and how characters flow through a scene and how like cohesive everything is in the scene together.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you guys have worked on have definitely, it's really surreal for me to have two animators on a call. I'm from a small town in Texas, and just to be able to have conversations with people that created things that I consumed. So, because cartoons is huge for me. Like I love cartoons. I've watched probably everything you guys have worked on or thought of working on.
Wait, how did you get inside my head and watch the stuff I've thought of working on?
Well, I've thought of it. Yeah, I'm
Get
there.
out.
It's the new AI technology. It's everywhere. It's
Oh no, not the AI.
stealing your
Get the AI away
brainwaves.
from here.
Well, that's
Moreover,
another question I have for both of you.
I've
Actually,
got a few things out there that I've Alan Smithy that I guarantee you've never seen. I've worked on some garbage.
Some garbage.
But, go ahead.
As long as you don't share it, then yeah,
No,
I probably haven't
you will
seen it.
never know.
I'll never know, but I might have seen it. But
oh, go ahead.
But that's another. That's one of the questions that I'd come up with for both of you guys. I guess both of you can answer. Really, it's the question on AI. How do you guys feel about AI and its usage in the industry, in like commercially being used? And the reason why I asked this is because there's a video game that recently came out that was created by the Rick and Morty guys called High on Life. And in that movie, in that video game, they do have some movie posters that they wanted to look wacky. So they used AI to generate these wacky looking movie posters to put in their video game. How do you guys feel about people using AI, whether it be entirely to create something or to use just as to make like background stuff, or just assets, just to make like create an asset to use or something like that in an animation?
I mean, I think it's fine I think wackiness is strangeness is where it should be used. You know what I mean? Like it's
never having to storyboard a crowd scene ever again. I'm all for it.
If it can do that, that's great. I mean, look, I can't say that I know a lot of what's going on in AI. I kind of ignore it. And lucky enough, I don't have to deal with it. But thinking about it abstractly, I don't think creatively, I mean, could robots come up with stuff that's creative and cool? I guess that's possible, but I don't really want robots replacing people.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
Having made a show about a robot who I dearly love, I don't want robots to actually take the place of any of us.
Yeah, no, definitely
unless
not.
that means that we all get to just lounge around and have an guaranteed income of $200,000 each or more, while they do all the work. That's great. But I think in terms of like people telling stories, people want to hear stories that other people are telling them. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of there's a local comic book creators that have created their own comic book world that are local here in Waco, Texas, and I'd engaged in a conversation with them about AI in the industries and being used, and a lot of the functional hand drawn guys that are doing the drawing and the hands on process. A lot of them are scared that they're gonna be, lose their job at the point when AI could draw, say AI draws Spider-Man exactly the way that the company wants it to be drawn, and there's zero imperfections, like it completely erases all human error kind of thing. So I don't know, it's just interesting. I think it's an interesting conversation. I don't think AI is
I think
ever going
human
to
errors are one of the things that's most interesting about humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to err is human. Otherwise, we can't connect with perfect things as human beings. So I don't think that computers will ever be able to take away. I mean, it's we're all looking for something that's not going to ever be created
One
by
of the things
somebody that's
I
not a human
really,
being.
one of the things I really love actually about the look of Kid Cosmic is, you can see like little scratchy lines and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And it's got that kind of old school comic book look to it, and that's one of those things that I always feel comes out eventually is, we come up with some new toy, we play with it for a little while, and then we go, okay, but now what can we do? And it was the same way with CGI. With CGI, for the longest time, everything had to look hyper realistic, and the more realistic you could look, the better your CGI was. And then once everyone got tired of that, the new goal was to make CGI look a little less perfect. And like I said, that's kind of what you did a little bit with Kid Cosmic, and with, even on, I noticed on Gravity Falls, I mean, you guys use CGI from time to time, and
Yeah,
it's
mostly that was hand drawn,
right, and
and it was a conscious decision on Alex Hirsch's part. He wanted it
actually that brings, we haven't really talked about Gravity Falls much, and we probably should, or people are going to be angry with us.
I don't know what people's expectations are, so you tell me.
I don't know what they're
I'm happy to
expecting.
please the
It's
crowd.
another one of those shows.
Topic you want to bring up.
It's another one of those shows that people are just ravenous for, and rightfully so. It was a great show, and very, like, I felt sophisticated, and again, the storytelling and everything was really just kind of ahead of its time. What are your fondest memories from Gravity Falls? Because
Rusty,
I still have this. You gave me this, and this is my little treasures.
Oh, that's actually what I was going to ask. It's about your books, but Gravity Falls. We could do Gravity Falls, and then we could segue into your books. I actually pre-ordered The Horrible Things, the #1. So
I'm glad.
I'm ready for that.
Good job.
Yeah, my wife is a middle school age teacher. She teaches kids reading. So she's going to put the book in her classroom so they could.
Oh, great! I'm glad to hear it. I mean,
absolutely.
That's perfect. That's great. Thank you so much. My thoughts on Gravity Falls, fond memories. I have a lot of fond memories of Gravity Falls. I mean, it was a great show to work on, and the reason I did work on it. Well, let me backtrack. I became a part of it because Disney had this practice of basically putting old veterans, pairing them up with young creators who didn't know what they were doing. Basically, they'd pull people from associated art industries like you're an illustrator. We like your illustration style. Why don't you come create a show for us? And sometimes they would like, yeah, you're going to get your show. Now here's this industry veteran who actually knows how to make the show. They will make it with you. Maybe they'll make it for you. But you'll still be you'll be credited as the creator. I'd heard about that. I was never interested in that because, like, if I was going to create another show and do all the work, I wanted the show to be my own. But I met Alex. They kind of hooked us up, and I'd actually met him prior and gotten a sense of who the guy was. And I saw the pilot for Gravity Falls, and I knew he knew what he was doing. And that if I came in to work on the show with him, I wouldn't be making the show for him. I'd be making the show with him, that he would be the creative lead, as any creator should be. So when the timing was right, I left My Little Pony and went to work on Gravity Falls. And, basically I was just one of his collaborators. you know, and helped him make the show, but he was always the lead on it, and he had a vision for the show. And you know, I ended up making some, you know, sizable creative contributions to it, but I was basically working with someone who knew what they were doing and loved it. And one of the reasons I went was not only because he knew what he was doing, but because he wanted to do these bigger stories. He wanted to do season-long arcs, and you know, he had an idea of how the whole series ended. And up until that point, I really hadn't had the experience of doing that on any show. Would have loved to have done on Teenage Robot, but like us back in the day, they wouldn't let us do that kind of thing. So that was why I came onto the show. And besides Teenage Robot, it's the hardest show to work on. Like I've devoted the most extra hours to that show. Besides Teenage Robot, which I was, you know, I've worked on Teenage Robot 7 days a week for like 2 years straight. You know, with maybe a time off for Christmas and New Year's, but not much.
No, Gravity Falls was really ambitious.
Gravity Falls was super ambitious. You know, and Alex had kind of Alex Hirsch had kind of taken the primetime way of working to heart, which is in primetime, you get stuff back from overseas, doesn't make you laugh anymore, you reanimate it. You send new boards over, you reanimate sequences. I got a little touch of that way of working when I worked on Family Guy briefly. In television, you don't do that. In television, you send it overseas, it's locked, it's going to stay locked. That's the way it's going to be. You deal with it, you make it the best you can when it comes back in post. Alex didn't do that. Alex would make changes when we got stuff back from overseas. He wouldn't have stuff reanimated, but occasionally we would make, you know, creative choices and send them back overseas and start things from scratch. But we'd re-record dialogue, we would change lines. The fact that they told him he could, like, because of the way post was done in Disney at Disney, we could manipulate mouth shapes, so he could put whole new words into characters' mouths.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So we were rewriting on the stage when we were at the mix to like finish the episode. He would change dialogue. Sounds like a nightmare. It was certain everybody looked at it as a nightmare. But I will say this: whenever he changed something, he changed it for the better. And one of the reasons the show is as good as it was is because he never gave up on an episode. He didn't say like, well, it's too late. It was always like, no, this is not satisfactory. I've got to change this. And not just because like the joke would be better, though we did change jokes, but because the story would be better, because this was important for the characters. So that kind of commitment to making things better at every stage, I really admired and I was inspired by. And,
that's awesome. Well, and that
great time working with him.
That does sort of connect to the whole question of technology too. You know, nowadays sending something overseas means sending it digitally, whereas on Teenage Robot and back then, we were literally sending huge packages of
giant boxes of artwork.
Volvoized boxes of paper and what have you. But so now you helped you you authored the Gravity Falls book, and now
yes, I am.
A horrible bag of terrible things. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, briefly to talk about the Gravity Falls books. Yeah, we did 2 books for Gravity Falls. The second one of which was a journal. That's the first one, Dipper and Mabel's Guide to Mystery Nonstop Fun. And then we did a version of Journal 3, which was like the in-show journal that Dexter uses. We had the chance to actually write the actual journal, and Alex amazing. And I did that together. I kind of sometime somewhere along the line, having written stories over and over and over again for TV, I realized that was kind of the focus of what my career, which was, you know, I'm a storyteller. That sounds very grand and kind of
no, but it's true.
It's silly, true. But like I like telling stories is the more relatable way to say that, right? I like telling stories. Like I love animation. I love watching animated shows. I love working on animated shows, but I really love telling stories. So on Gravity Falls, I kind of had the chance to transition into telling stories in the written way, in the written form, in the traditional way, as a book, and loved doing that. Did a couple more different books for Disney Publishing. One that was kind of tangential to DuckTales, and one that was off of a Pixar movie, Onward. And but all this time, I was eventually wanted to get to writing my own stories, which I have now done. I was working while I was working on Kid Cosmic, and actually before that, while I was still at Disney, I kind of came up with this idea, and I kind of was just like decided I was going to wake up an hour earlier every morning and start writing the what turned into the horrible bag of terrible things. And so I worked on it for several years, just kind of in my off time. Eventually got it to a place I was happy with it, showed it to a literary agent who decided he wanted to be my literary agent because he liked it. He took it out to the market and we sold it to Penguin. Penguin Workshop is the division that's putting it out. And he asked me whether I thought it was going to be one story or more. And I said, I think could be a trilogy. So we pitched them the trilogy and they picked up all 3 books.
Oh,
Awesome.
So that's where we're at. Horrible Bag of Terrible Things comes out this July 25th. It'll be on bookshelves. You can pre-order it now. You can go to my website, robrenzetti.com, if you want, and click on the link to pre-order it. And I'm currently writing the second book. I'm have a deadline approaching for draft 3 of book 2, which I was working on before I got on a horn with you guys. I'm still working on it in my spare hours because I'm back at Disney working on a new project for during the day. So I'm working on books. Going to finish this second book off. Going to be writing the 3rd book this summer. The second book is going to come out in January of next year. And I think the 3rd book is now slated for September of next year.
Awesome.
So all 3 will be out by the time school starts, I think, next year, 2024. But your kids and you can read the first book, The Horrible Bag of Terrible Things, this July. It'll be coming.
I can't wait because my daughter will be knocking on the door of 8 years old right around that time.
Oh, she's right there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And she, she loves kind of spooky, scary stuff. And she's already a fairly sophisticated reader. So when she was
a fairly sophisticated book, I hope, for the more great audience.
But see,
I think it's sophisticated enough that adult readers will enjoy it as well. I don't talk. I never have liked talking down to my audience. I don't talk down to kids, and I don't write down to them either. So the book is it's meant to be a little bit challenging. It's meant to challenge challenge them in different ways. It's meant to challenge their vocabulary. I don't shy away from using $5 words, $10 words, as many as I can afford.
That's the thing. When you look back on everything you've done over the course of your career, you can talk about how many seasons something got that you've worked on. Everything you've worked on has been great. Like everything you've done has turned out great. From the small of the bigger, Mina and the Count, Teenage Robot, you've done one great thing after another. So it's all the more reason we were super grateful that you would come on this show with us. And Rob, it's just been great seeing you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Especially, from like I said earlier, being from a small town in Texas, and being able to talk to all you guys it's been a crazy journey for podcasting for me over the last year and a half. So I appreciate
the last question I have
appreciate
for
Rob as well. Go ahead.
The last question I have for Rob is one that I know you have for him as well. Rob, will you come back? Will you talk to us again?
Oh, sure. I'd love to come back. I've got plenty more stories and I'm
awesome. Because I have plenty more questions and plenty more stories I want to hear.
Have me back right before the book comes out.
There you go. Yeah,
I can shamelessly promote it more. When this is a dumb technical question, maybe you don't want to talk about this. When will this be? When will you guys be
casting?
Yeah, casting.
This will be out in the atmosphere as soon as we bag 2 more interviews. So we've got 3 episodes already ready to release, but we're waiting for 3. So we have 2 more interviews that we'll do, and then we will start releasing
them in a batch. Is that what you're planning?
No, we're gonna release them. I want to release them as a batch, but I'll probably release 2 a week until we catch up to where it's 1 episode a week. But because the way the way everything is formatted is gonna be like 1 episode is gonna be just me and F talking and riffing about animation, and then we'll have the next episode will be a guest episode, that kind of thing. That way it's always something fresh.
Well, let me know when it's going to be. Let me know when you think
it will probably be. Yeah,
absolutely.
It'll probably be not too far from when when the book comes out. So,
I'm thinking about May or June is when we'll probably launch for our actual first episode will be in the airwaves.
Then I'm going to give you well, at least at this point, is an exclusive bit of news beyond the the publication of The Horrible Bag of Terrible Things, which is in celebration of the 20th anniversary of Teenage Robot's premiere on August 1st, 2003. On August 1st, 2023, through the newsletter, which you can sign up on at my website, I'm going to be telling a teenage robot story. In just in words, maybe some visuals. We'll see. That's not settled quite yet, but I'm going to do like a chapter by chapter, a little mini series to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the show premiere and to give
Can't
the
wait.
fans something new.
It's gonna be awesome.
And,
Yeah, I can't wait. That's great. That's great news. There you go. Exclusivity right here.
You are gonna break the internet.
well, we'll see. Maybe we'll break some fans. Maybe I'll break their hearts. Maybe they'll hate it. But I'm doing I got a story that I kind of like. I think it'll be fun. If it does well and I can come up with another season, I might do a second story after that.
That is amazing.
But I got a little bit of a story I'd like to tell, and I thought I would give the fans something because they are so many devoted fans out there, and people still remember the show. So I wanted to give them. So I'm not totally against reboots, but this is not exactly a reboot of the show. There will be no cartoons, but there will be words, and you can imagine the cartoons in your head.
I'm going to be drawing fan art for it. I just know it. I still love drawing those characters. So,
me too. I wish I was better at drawing them, but we'll see.
Well, that is amazing.
I guess I can now make a circle template and draw Jenny to my heart's delight if I like.
Well, thank you for that amazing scoop.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely
excited just as a fan. I can't wait. This is amazing.
Thank you. I'm excited to start. I've got to actually start writing it after I got the second book of Horrible Bag off my desk. I got to get that out of the way, and then I'm going to dive in and start writing it for real. I've written a version of the first chapter, but I'm going to go back in and shiny it up, make that robot nice and shiny. So
all right,
everybody can look for that. I'll be announcing it elsewhere, but depending on how this comes out, this could be the first announcement of it. So
fantastic.
All righty, Rob. Well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I couldn't thank you enough for being a part of the animation conversation. We appreciate your time for sure.
Of course, Rusty. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
John,
pleasure to meet you too.
AKF, my old friend. It's good to see you. Say hello to your wife and your daughter.
We'll do.
Give them my love. Whatever series of dogs you have right now, give them a smooch for me.
Say hi to Tracy and of course Digby Flopwell.
Yes.
Every time you post about Digby Flopwell, I have to scream the name Digby.
I know. I've noticed.
Well, it's just you can't not do it. It's too much.
You didn't hear him, but before we got on the air, he was scraping at the door trying to get into the room, and I would have been too distracted to let him in here during the.
He wanted to give
during
his
the podcast. Maybe next time I'll pick him up and you can see him on camera.
That'd be awesome. All right, everybody. Rob, thanks again. This is F signing off. Zigga zigga, party people.
Bye, everyone.
Hey guys, you can find us at Instagram and Twitter at Animation Convo. You can find us on YouTube at Animation Conversation, and you can email us at theanimationconversation@gmail.com. Join us again for another animation conversation. This podcast is produced by Rogue Media Network.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.